The first order of business this evening, members of council, is the adoption of the council minutes of August 10, 2009. Moved by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Maves. Any comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Wing.
Thank you. A comment about the, on page 3, ratification of Community Services Committee actions from the last meeting. We were a little hasty in our action to direct staff to demolish the wrought iron fence and stone wall along the west side of the Oswald House property. First of all, the reason that the property owners to whom the fence belongs wasn't there, I discovered after the meeting, was because they hadn't even been notified of the meeting. The fence is specifically named in the bylaw, which designates their property and is registered on their land title, and the fence was going to be their next restoration project. Secondly, the report we received was an abbreviated version offering only 3 alternatives instead of the full range. We really, if we were going to make that kind of decision, we should have had the full gamut of options ahead of us or before us. We also have a local precedent for respecting heritage resources where they conflict with the use of land that was subsequently taken for road allowance. There's the Charles Green grave outside the Lundy's Lane Cemetery on the north side of Lundy's Lane, just east of Montrose Road. The road actually narrows there to accommodate it. At last Wednesday's Municipal Heritage Committee meeting, this is after our council meeting, the motion was passed that the Municipal Heritage Committee advise council of the need to give notice of intention to de-designate the Oswald fence prior to the removal of the fence, and to provide council with a copy of the designating bylaw in which the fence is listed as a designating feature, and that is in our handouts tonight. Very little is said about the house other than it's a Regency cottage. It mentions a little bit about the owner, but the fence is probably the most predominant thing in the designating bylaw from 1978. Mr. Beeman told us that the fence escaped designation because the bylaw was only registered on the Oswald House land title and not on the municipal land title for the road allowance. But most of the fence on the Church's Lane side is on the Oswald House property, and so it's designated along with that property. I spoke with the Ministry of Culture after our last council meeting, explained the situation, and they said we can't give you legal advice, but we can advise on process. If that feature, the fence, was named in the bylaw, and then it is designated. And if it's a feature named in the bylaw, it's not just designated for the portion on private land, it's designated in its entirety. And it doesn't matter, according to the ministry, if it wasn't registered on the land title for the road allowance, it is still designated. They said in the best of both worlds it would have been, but it's immaterial that it was not. And the person I spoke with suggested it seems to him that since the fence was one of the features identified, the clear intent of the council of the day was to conserve it. An alteration to a designated property is any change to that designated property that affects the reasons for designation. Demolishing a part of the fence affects the reasons for designation of that property. As the Municipal Heritage Committee has pointed out, Council has not formally considered an alteration request as laid out under the Ontario Heritage Act, and the Ministry representative read the Act to me where it stipulates that no owner shall alter or permit alteration if alteration is likely to affect the reasons for designation as set out in any bylaw. So we have to formally set aside the designation of that fence if we want to proceed. And I really don't think the council back in 1978 would have been so silly as to name a fence when they didn't intend to recognize and conserve that. A petition began circulating. I understand it was late Friday night, and there's already hundreds of signatures on it. We haven't heard from the public on this.
Councillor Wing, I appreciate your point, and I don't want to disrupt your train of thought here, but we're dealing with the matter of the minutes.
Right.
And we'll certainly be glad to deal with this, but does this have something to do with the minutes?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It does.
Do you want to revisit this as well later on?
No, we need to defer any action on that motion from the August 10th decision until the owners of the property can be invited to attend a public meeting.
Sure.
Communications from the public have been received. Formal notice of council's intent to alter the heritage feature has been given, and council's had the full menu of options laid before it, so we can really consider the situation. So my motion is deferral of any action. Apparently the owners were advised that this staff want to take this fence down the second week in September. So it could be coming down before we meet again unless we defer action.
Okay.
And that's my motion.
Let's deal with this first, if you wouldn't mind. I'll entertain your motion.
Okay.
But we have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes, and then we'll deal with this if you don't mind. Councillor Thompson.
Well, I was going to second the motion for deferral.
Okay, if you just let me deal with the minutes first. It won't change the course of the action of the minutes in terms of what's happening. So all those in approval of the minutes of August 10th? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Now, Councillor, so we have a motion on the floor.
Yes, my motion is to defer action on the matter relating to the Oswald House fence at 2922 St. Paul Avenue.
Okay, do you want to read your reasons again?
Until the owners of the property can be notified and invited to attend a public meeting, communications from the public can be received. Notice of council's intent to alter the heritage feature has been given, and we have the full menu of options before us. Because it seems to me there was one that was only about half the price of what was being put before us last meeting.
And did you want to receive a report from the Heritage Committee with respect to this?
Yes, please, as soon as possible.
Is that coming to council?
It was a motion in the. It was a motion that was passed at the last Heritage Committee meeting, but I understand there's a very long process before anything coming from that committee can actually get to council. So if we can maybe speed that process up
Maybe you should include that in the motion, that council be supplied with that information before any action?
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it's seconded by Councillor Thompson. Now, I was surprised, too, as well, that the owners weren't at the last meeting in Community Services, but I appreciate the fact that they're here this evening, and certainly I would hope that we could resolve this matter to everyone's satisfaction yet. But, Council, we have before us a motion to defer. It's not debatable, and so we will deal with that now, if you would. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, one opposed. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask for any disclosures of any pecuniary interest by any members of council. Councillor Fisher.
Check number 329882. I refunded some money to the city.
Okay, so noted. Councillor Carrio.
Thank you, Worship. On number 2A, there's a Jane Pepino aired burles.
Yes.
Going to get into a discussion about hospitality resorts. I have a conflict on that. They're my neighbor. If you're going to re-talk about that, anything to do with that, Your Worship.
It's okay, thank you. So noted. Councillor Maves.
Yes, check number 330269. That's my business. And also under reports, the Calogero sidewalk situation.
Okay, so noted. Thank you. Councillor Wing.
Yes, report MW 2009-62, a consultant selection for the Lundy's Lane Historical Museum project, and probably the Celebration 2012 deputation as well. The correspondence indicates there may be a fundraising update on the museum expansion, so if they get into that, then I have a conflict. One of the places at which my spouse is employed is the museum.
Okay, so noted. Thank you. And I'd like to disclose check number 330525 payable to myself as well. Move on with deputations, if I may, members of council, and I'm just going to move to the front here. It's my pleasure this evening, members of council, to introduce 10 men who really don't need an introduction. Their pictures have been in more newspapers and on more flyers and websites and billboards than any other group in the city's history. The 10 men in a tent event, the brainchild of Bob Gale, came about subsequent to a conversation between Bob and the executive director of Project Share, Elaine Harvey. With the advent of Project Share's 20th anniversary and the need greater than ever, the prospect of finding new and innovative ways to fulfill their needs loomed ahead of them. Along came Bob and his 9 civic-minded friends who brainstormed and developed one of the most, if not most successful fundraisers in the city. 10 men, 1 tent, 1 very busy street corner, great publicity, 5 chefs, 5 charities, 1 wind and rainstorm, 200,000 hits in 2 weeks on Project Share's website, hundreds of people every day for lunch, donation from entire neighborhoods, businesses, baseball teams, even the Tooth Fairy, I'm told, equaled 60,000 pounds of food, $305,000 total in cash and food donations. And all these numbers came together to produce an unequaled response to one of the most compelling issues and times in Niagara Falls: the need to help an increasing number of families and individuals with emergency food and services. And thank you, gentlemen, for hearing the call from Project Share. Thank you to the 5 charities and their volunteers who assisted with your work: Project Share, Niagara Falls Community Outreach, Tender Wishes, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Winter Festival of Lights, and thank you to the 5 chefs who made the 10 men drool every day while hundreds of local supporters enjoyed their enticing cuisine. Nani Malika from Casamia, Mark Hand from the Hospitality on Hand, Dominic Laduca from Johnny Rocco's, Gino Stranges from Monticello's, and John Tenier from John Tenier Catering. And special thanks again to Lane Harvey and Jeff Ferrassi, the Project Share administrators behind the scenes. And as a group, these individuals raised the awareness of Project Share's plight tenfold. And people were talking about it for weeks even before the event, and the talk still continues weeks after the event. Congratulations and thank you to everyone. You're a great credit to our city and to your fellow man. Now, I have a presentation to make to each of these individuals. I'm going to ask them to come up, and I'm sure they'd like to say a few words. They're all here this evening looking a little better than when I saw them last. They're here in the original, one of the 2 original shirts they wore. I'm thankful that they have been washed, I understand. And you've since showered, correct? A few times. So I'm going to ask them to come forward to receive, if I could, a gift and an acknowledgement, if I may. I'm going to call upon Bob Gale first, please. Bob, would you come forward?
I don't want to say anything. Other than saying thank you, I'll let the gentleman say something.
All righty.
Thank you very much.
Dino Fazio. So you actually keep it quiet.
I'm keeping it quiet.
Thank you.
You talk.
No.
That's not good.
Yeah, thank you kindly. I guess, and for Bob, I'll speak for Bob maybe, and myself. Since he doesn't want to speak, first time in...
Everybody's sick of hearing me talk. Mayor, to control these guys was tough enough. For Jim D. Daddy to lose his voice after 2 days, and myself and Tim Parker, I think they'd pay $1 million for that, wouldn't they? Yeah.
So you know what? Then I will be frank as well. Bring the next guy up. Kevin's really. Kevin.
When you talk, we all cry.
Thank you, Kevin. Brian Pell. Congratulations. Thank you very much, sir. Dave Markham. Congratulations, Dave. Thank you, sir. It's very great. Blair.
Thanks, buddy.
Bill Burke. Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bill, tell them about the check you got at the wedding in Toronto.
Oh, yeah, when it was all said and done, it was, we finished up on Friday, and then I was down at the wedding on Saturday, and a buddy had flown in from Winnipeg, and he was sort of mad at me that I hadn't let him know what was going on, and goes upstairs, comes back, and another check for $500. So it just it kept going through it. So,
members.
Hey, you stay over there.
Tim Parker. And I don't see Rob White. He couldn't make it this evening, but Rob was with 105.1 The River. He was the sole injury, I think, one day, right? Correct? Dr. Zamakis was there. They went down to emergency, but he survived. So we do thank Rob, and I hope that we can make this presentation to him very quickly. So we'll make sure we give him our thanks on behalf of Rob.
When Rob got hurt, we were all going, what a lucky guy. He gets the Some guys get all the breaks.
Those weren't the exact words.
And last but not least, our very own Councillor Jim Diodat.
We're scared to say Jim's our spokesman.
Jim's going to have to account for the fact that he lost his voice, and you have to explain to us how that happened.
I'm just yelling, Bob, get off me. Well, just because I guess we're in my venue here tonight, all I will say, there was a sentence that was used quite often throughout the week, and that sentence was, what happens in the tent stays in the tent. And I know that a couple of the guys are working on their memoirs from the week. Well, Brian had the best title. He said, I can't stand being in the tent with these aspirin anymore. Yeah, he's a pharmacist. Anyway. Well, some jokes, Bill, they go over and some don't. At least the
Keep trying.
At least the crickets enjoyed that one. Another check from a staff member here, and one thing I do want to say from my perspective, from the city's perspective, I was away with my wife when I got the call or the email from Jeff Grashy about this crazy idea, and I guess like most of us, we agreed before we knew exactly what we were getting into.
It was a great idea.
It was a great idea. And I'm glad you said that, Bob, because the group here actually massaged the original idea. Bob's original idea was he was going camping. Yeah, and the guys kind of massaged it and turned it into the event that it was. But I have to say, a lot of us were strangers before this event. It bonded us, brought us very close, and I can't think of a better group of guys. The dynamics were amazing. I never felt tired while I was there being with these guys. The energy was really high. Mind you, I haven't felt rested since I left. My wife, I kept watching Kojiko to watch the guys. She asked how much I missed those guys. And I did miss these guys. It was a great experience. It was a positive. As far as I'm concerned, probably one of the biggest community events that happened in the city. And I do have to say, it was a community event. It became bigger than Project Share, bigger than any of us. It was a community event, and really it was the community that stepped up to really make things happen. And I was hoping, Your Worship, if we could maybe call on Elaine and Jeff, because they were tireless there every day. Yeah. They did everything.
Thank you so much for all your work as well. You might want to say a few words.
Well, I just want to thank all my men. I miss you too. I'm starting my morning off with you every day. And as everybody mentioned, this truly was a community event. Project Share's motto is our community at work. And I don't think that there ever was or ever will be another event that exemplified this as much as this did. Everybody bonded together. You were the catalyst that brought everybody together in the community to help their neighbors. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
The difference was, Mayor, that we had to make sure the personalities were right. And everybody said that we were all type A, but somehow we all got along.
I'm surprised at that. You're so
I agree. I mean, that was the biggest issue on it when I talked to Jeff, and that who we invite to this. We had to invite people that were going to lose there for 5 days, and take Dr. George and Bill. I mean, Bill doesn't even live in this community, didn't have anything to do with this community. The coach was let go the day before. I mean, all these things coming together, all these gentlemen lost so much being there, and it was great. We never had an argument while we were there. We acted like we were 20-year-olds again, and we paid for it a week later. But to sell this once more, it doesn't end here. Project Share still needs help. I don't even know where I'm facing to talk about this. But if anybody still wants to donate to Project Share, be it food or money, and that, I mean, I have to thank Victor for stepping out for his Mount Carmel subdivision there and coming up. Down there about tears to our eyes, and then the Pirates from the Niagara Falls Minor Baseball Association showed up, and their coach said, I just wanted to teach the kids how to share. And then the parents were all there with bags, and it brought tears to all our eyes. People like Ken Todd there, who I didn't know that he volunteered for Project Share for many years. Ken, like 100 years or whatever. But I mean, he was there helping out with his wife and that, and all the city people that showed up, and that, as well as the great volunteers. We made jokes of everybody. It was humor everywhere. 80-year-olds, we were telling them to move faster. But
And you still didn't move any.
I didn't mean you as an 80-year-old. Regardless, I thank you very much, and I thank the community for helping us. I'm sorry I'm talking again.
And we're thanking you as well for your commitment. Now, I know there was a lot of tomfoolery going on. I know there was one bit of fallout that occurred since that time. I know there was been some difficulty with Tim Parker not being able to sleep. I'm glad you fellows finally returned his teddy bear. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Members of Council, we have one further presentation this evening as well. We have with us this evening jockey Corey Fraser. And as you know, Corey was the winner of the Prince of Wales Stakes, and it was in 1999 that Corey Fraser's life changed. He decided to become a jockey. Corey Fraser lived in Niagara Falls from the age of 10 with his mother Susan Fraser, and he attended Simcoe Street School and West Lane Secondary School. And at West Lane, Fraser actually played rugby and later worked as a greeter at Red Lobster in Niagara Falls. In 1999, he made a decision that was going to change his life entirely. He knew he wanted to be an athlete, but he knew his choices were limited due to his size. And so he was down to one sport, and that was horse racing. He'd never ridden a horse. He didn't even know how tough the sport was and how jockeys were a little more than skill for protection, and he can be catapulted off horses at 60 kilometers an hour. And after training and much determination and dedication, he was approached by a successful Woodbine trainer and has never looked back since. He won his first career race on November 9, 2003 in Toronto. He rode quarter horses at Peacock, now called Ajax Downs, before progressing to thoroughbred race riding. To mention a few of his successes, he has captured 3 stakes races, posted a 140 top 3 finishes at the Toronto Oval, and 183 top 3 finishes at Woodbine. He's captured the Sovereign Awards as Canada's top apprentice in 1994, collected 66 wins at Woodbine, and $2.35 million in purse earnings. This year, jockey Corey Fraser won the 74th running of the Prince of Wales Stakes in Fort Erie. I was very pleased to be in attendance at this incredibly exciting race as Corey's horse named Gallant raced across the finish line, giving Corey his first Canadian Triple Crown win. It was a photo finish race between Gallant and Milwaukee Appeal, and the official needed some time to sort the matter out as to which horse won. The camera showed that Gallant, at 15-1 odds, had nosed out the filly Milwaukee Appeal, and at the 316th mile dirt course run for a total purse of $500,000. The Prince of Wales Stakes is the second jewel of Canada's Triple Crown of thoroughbred racing, and Corey Fraser now lives in Bolton, Ontario, and he's with us this evening to accept our acknowledgement. So Corey, can you come forward, please? Pleasure on behalf of the members of council to present this to you with congratulations. First place finisher of the Prince of Wales Stakes. He ran a Gallant race in 156.74 on July 12, 2009. And this is signed by myself and members of council. Congratulations. We appreciate the fact that you can bring our town some notoriety, and we are glad to have you at council to acknowledge your success. We want to say a few words.
Thank you.
This whole career change of mine has been definitely life-changing. It pretty much found me. Growing up in Niagara Falls, I'd have to say was a great time of my life. I moved away just because I'm working at Woodbine. I just even driving here, looking back at the schools I went to, and even I used to sit on one of those cameras at council volunteering for Coach Girl. It's quite amazing looking back at everything. I'm definitely truly honored. I'm kind of awestruck by all this, that I was honored by the city that I grew up in, and I just thank you.
Our pleasure to have you here. One question they asked me to ask you, how much do you weigh?
115 pounds.
150. Do you carry much weight with you at times?
How do you mean? On my
weight
days off? Yeah.
No. On the horses.
In that certain race, yeah, you carry a bit more weight.
Very good. Well, congratulations, and thanks on behalf of members of council.
Thank you very much.
The next deputation we have this evening is from the Celebration 2012 Committee, and with regard to the Bicentennial Task Force, we have with us Gord West and Don Jackson, who will apprise council of the upcoming celebration for the 2012 event. So welcome again, gentlemen. And I see you have Kathy Powell with you as well, so thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Mayor Selsey and councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to attend tonight to update you regarding the Board of Museums, your Board of Museums, fundraising activities for the Lundy's Lane Battlefield Legacy Project. For those who are watching tonight who may not be fully aware of the nature of this project, it will provide a legacy gift to commemorate the upcoming bicentennial of the War of 1812 and the Battle of Lundy's Lane. It will honor the significant impact left by these events on our city, as well as the development of Canada as a nation. A major part of this project, as you are aware, involves the capital expansion and renovation of the Lundy's Lane Historical Museum, which will be upgraded to current standards of accessibility and display, and will include a visitor center for the War of 1812 and the Battle of Lundy's Lane. There will be further development of the Lundy's Lane Battlefield National Historic Site. And I emphasize national. We're sitting in an area where there is a national historic site, including improvements to interpretive trails and battlefield signage. And really, a very special part of this project will be the building of a signature gateway walkway, which will join two sides of the battlefield that are currently bisected by a very major roadway, namely Lundy's Lane. And it will symbolize 200 years of peace between two great countries, Canada and the United States. As you are aware, this $12 million project is being financed through a federal, provincial, municipal partnership. And our Board of Museums, your Board of Museums, is conducting its own capital fundraising campaign of $2 million to provide half of the municipal share. Although fundraising efforts are normally slow during the summer months, I'm very pleased to report that donations to our campaign are continuing to be received. Since our last report to Council, both Casino Cares Foundation and Walker Industries Holdings Limited have come forward with $50,000 gifts to this campaign. These are in addition to other smaller but nonetheless equally important contributions that have been received by our campaign. Our total is now approaching $800,000, and there are one or two major contributions we hope to finalize within the next 2 or 3 weeks that will take us over the $1 million mark. Opportunities still exist for major naming opportunities within our new museum. If you are a corporation or a business looking for such an opportunity, if you are a family that is considering a way to leave your legacy in this community, if you are a tourist establishment that wishes to partner with a project that will be bringing significant numbers of tourists during the bicentennial and beyond, please contact me, and I will be very pleased to discuss those opportunities with you. The very best place to preserve a legacy is in our community's museum. This is what we are all about. Stay tuned for the launch of our public campaign. It will be starting in the next month or so. After listening to your first delegation tonight, I'm wondering whether I could convince them to do 10 Men in a Museum sequel. We'll name it whatever they want, but they're a great bunch of people. Finally, we are awaiting word to see if we've been successful in our application for an infrastructure stimulus grant for nonprofit groups to be used towards the funding of the Gateway Walkway to be built over Lundy's Lane. In this regard, I must express my sincere thanks to CAO Ken Todd for his work in expediting our application at the 11th hour. There's no doubt it was the 11th hour. To Mayor Selsey, to Rob Nicholson, MP, and to Kim Crater, MPP, for their strong letters of support in our application. And to Ed Dulovic for his support of a very tight timeline for an EA and construction schedule. Since the very beginning, the support of this council and of city staff for this project has been outstanding. The result will obviously be a source of pride to everyone involved. I'll turn this to our board chair, Gord West.
Thank you.
Yes, maybe the idea would be to get them to trade in their yellow T-shirts for 1812 uniforms, and we'll have 10 reenactors in a tent. This actually comes from Alex. Thank you, Alex. I like that. Your Worship, City Councilors, the City of Niagara Falls 1812 Bicentennial Task Force invites you to our second annual Celebration 2012. This time, a social Sunday evening on the terrace overlooking the lake at Legends on the Niagara Golf Complex. This year, we have much to celebrate, achieving the support of the governments, as Don has said, of Canada and the province of Ontario, as well as you, towards the renovation and major capital expansion of the Lundy's Lane Historical Museum, including a world-class visitors center to display and interpret our city's War of 1812 collection. Our architects, Moriyama and Tashima, are examining our site and the museum's needs as they seek to fulfill their mandate, a nationally important visitors center for the War of 1812. Museum staff are excited about the opportunity to plan and create new exhibits over the next 3 years to be ready for opening in June 2012. But back to the point, on Sunday, September 27th, 2009, at 4 p.m. at Legends Golf Club, there will be a great place to socialize. Our guests will enjoy music by local instrumentalists, the Vintage Jazz Trio, and the Legends banquet chefs serve the fine dishes at sampling stations, allowing time to circulate and to meet other guests. This year our theme is inspired by the recent anniversary of the Boundary Waters Treaty and the 200th anniversary of the Royal Navy dockyards in Halifax, as well as the fact that Royal Navy and the American Navy engaged in Burlington races on Lake Ontario at this time of the year in 1813. Various naval traditions will be incorporated into the evening's program. Besides being able to provide a charitable tax receipt for a portion of the ticket this year, we are also raising funds with a fabulous silent auction. It features gift baskets, framed photographs, art certificates for adventures such as scuba diving, a helicopter tour, wine tours, via train trips, or make your own brew, as well as many other diverse items. All proceeds are directed to the Lundy's Lane Battlefield Legacy Project, for 2012 and beyond. We celebrate all the local businesses that donated to our silent auction, as well as our private and public funding contributions, especially the City of Niagara Falls, for their support and steadfast enthusiasm for our legacy project. Guests are welcome to come stylishly dressed in period attire, but wearing blue, white, and/or red will be showing your historical style. Museum staff are available to assist with your fashion decisions before the event at any of our museums. Thank you, Your Worship, for already having purchased your tickets, and staff members who have as well. And I have tickets on hand now for those who wish to attend, or you may call the museum at 905-358-5082 or drop by any of the museums to pick them up. Thank you again very much, and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Mr. West and Mr. Jackson. We may have questions from members of council. We appreciate the update, especially on the fundraising side. So you're nearing the $1 million mark. Congratulations on that milestone. Are there any questions from members of council of anybody from the Museums Board? Having seen no, and well, thank you so much, and thank you for delivering the ticket. We appreciate that. We'll see you then. Thank you very much, Don. Members of council, we do have a request for a deputation by Mr. Milan Yeager, who wishes to address council on another matter this evening. Have a motion to allow Mr. Yeager to speak. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Wing. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Welcome, Mr. Yeager. Please come forward. Good evening. Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and fellow citizens. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I will be brief. As you know, it concerns the 4 building lots on the site or sites on Swayze Drive that were offered for auction on the 11th of July. I saw the lots and I thought they'd be a nice location to build a home and also offer a chance to allow my family to be close. The neighborhood is a nice mix of townhouses directly across the road from the lots, and single-family homes abutting to the left with a city park just across the hydro field. I think that standing on the property with the hydro wires across the front, as shown in the city advertising, and manhole cover in the street out front, as well as a fire hydrant directly across the road, and a sign for a buried gas line directly in front of the lot would lead one to believe that these lots were quite easily serviceable, like say just bringing in the laterals from the road. With the sewers at the road, I'd be able to do what I hope to do, but I don't have the ability to put in a mainline sewer down Swayze Drive and then repave it all at my expense. This would double the cost of the properties. If the city would bring the sewers down the road, I'd be very happy with the deal. These properties were shown to be building sites, the same as the other properties that were offered. Why were they shown the same if the services were not the same? I'm hoping to resolve this matter soon if possible, as it has put a tremendous amount of stress on my family and myself. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Yeager. Are there any questions of members of council? Yeah. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, Mr. Yeager, maybe you could pass the. This is something that could very easily have fooled a lot of people. In fact, you have a letter from a builder-developer who also was the only other bidder on the properties, and he has given you a letter indicating to whom it may concern that he was bidding on the lots thinking that they were service lots. It is an honest mistake that anybody could make. In fact, I lived in the townhouses across the road there for 8 years, and if somebody had have asked me, I would have automatically responded that it's all serviced in the area. This is something that the council will have to deliberate and to make a final decision with respect to that. But I think it would be appropriate to circulate the pictures that you have there and also the letter from Mr. Body, just to show that you had the impression that these were service lots. So hopefully we can come to a conclusion where the lots can be re-advertised and or in my opinion, the servicing put in and then advertise the lots again, which would certainly offset and maybe bring in a much higher price than that was initially suggested. So I would suggest you pass the pictures around so people know the full extent of your misunderstanding.
Any further questions by members of council? Okay. Great. I have a motion then to receive Mr. Yeager's submission, please. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Maves.
Yeah, I would move that we receive this submission and defer the matter to appropriate, obviously, I think the 14th of September for further discussions from our solicitor in committee and for an opportunity to come to a resolution of the matter.
Yes, that's being done as we speak, so that's fine. So we have a motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Yeager. Thank you. Move on to the next item on the agenda. Mr. Clerk, would you introduce the next item, please?
Your Worship, a public meeting is now being convened to consider a proposed amendment to the city zoning bylaw to permit a 5 to 6 story 56-unit apartment building at the north side of Dunn Street opposite of Atlantis Avenue. Notice was given by first-class mail in accordance with the Planning Act on Monday, August 10th, 2009, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passage of the zoning bylaw amendment to participate in any site plan process, if applicable, or preserve their opportunity to appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board shall leave their name on the sign-in sheets outside the council chamber.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yeager, I would just ask if you wouldn't mind, we're just conducting a public meeting. Could you just take that further, maybe outside, if you wouldn't mind, outside the chamber? Thank you. This time I'm going to ask Mr. Hurlovich to explain the purpose and the reason for the proposed bylaw amendment. Mr. Hurlovich?
Thank you, Your Worship. This property is on the north side of Dunn Street opposite Atlantis. It's pictured on your screens in front of you. It is to change the zoning of the property. The lands in question are on Dunn Street, just to the west of Level. Cavendish Manor is to the east. Niagara College to the west. A nursing home to the north. There's an apartment and a small commercial complex to the south, as well as single-family dwellings in the area. A number of the properties are pre-zoned for apartment use, although they have been developed with they're currently developed with single-family houses. The site plan by the applicant depicts the building that they propose. It's 5 stories towards the front of the street, 6 stories at the rear. This is a new application, new submission from one that Council considered approximately a month ago. The applicant has reduced the number of units in the building. The building would now contain 56 dwelling units. They've increased the landscaping. They have requested that the number of parking spaces be reduced. The overall landscaping is reduced from 40% to 35%. The property shows 2 driveways into the property that would actually service this development. In profile, then, the Dunn Street side of the property is on the left of the rendering that's in front of you. You can see this is 5 stories towards the street side, stepping up to 6 stories. The building also is narrower at the front and then has projecting wings towards the middle of the building, and you can see that in the gray tones on the screen. The application was previously before Council for a 6-story 58-unit building. This was not supported by staff and subsequently denied by council. The applicant now proposes 5 stories towards the street, 6 stories at the rear with 56 buildings, and he's requesting an R5C zone. We had regard for the provincial policy statements, which encourage a mix of housing types and efficient urban land use. The zoning would incorporate a intensified form of development. As well, the applicant has modified the building design to better fit the area. The official plan for the area is residential. The policies do support multiple family, and they support a variety of compatible building forms. Infill development is to make efficient use of services and also meet gradation with respect to massing and height. The official plan permits a density up to 100 units a hectare. The application has a density of 99 units per hectare after road widening, therefore it complies. By comparison, the apartment building across the street has a density of 95 units per hectare, so quite similar. The official plan suggests that development be located on the periphery and on arterial roads, public transit, close to commercial and institutional uses. The proposal generally satisfies the locational criteria of the OP. It is an arterial road with bus service. There are institutional uses and commercial uses nearby. The infill development is to be sensitive with respect to the density, height, gradation, building mass, arrangements, setbacks, and general appearance. The revised design actually has a 5-story height at the front, stepping back to 6 stories at the rear. This step-back form is an architectural technique that's recognized internationally as a way of visually reducing the building scale at the street while accommodating intensification. The apartment building across the street is 4 stories. It was originally supported at 5 by staff, but reduced to 4 at the Ontario Municipal Board through a negotiated settlement, which involved planning staff, the developer, and the area residents. The building to the north is a senior citizens residence. It's 3 stories in height. Cavendish Manor is 2 stories with a high-pitched roof. The apartment building is placed in the center of the property and therefore achieves significant setbacks and separations. The landscaped open space has been concentrated in the front yard. Previously, there were parking spaces shown there, so we believe that the landscaping helps mitigate the size of this building as well. The current zoning of the site is institutional. That would permit schools, hospitals, clubs, those types of uses. The applicant is requesting an R5C zone, which would permit a height of 6 stories or 19 meters. The change in development is acceptable because of the stepped form, which has 5 stories at the front, or 15.5 meters. This is an increase of 18 feet, or 5.5 meters, over the current zoning. The building would step up to 6 stories at the rear, or 19 meters. 19 meters. The site plans submitted as well show the significant front yard depth of the building. It's 15 meters, whereas the standard zoning requires 7.5 or about 25-foot setback. We're recommending that setback actually be incorporated into the amending bylaw to ensure that the building is placed as shown on the drawing that I mentioned earlier, or pointed out earlier. The applicant has also requested reductions in the landscaping requirement from 40% to 35%, and a reduction in the parking spaces from 1.4 spaces per unit to 1.25 spaces per unit, and a reduction in the aisle widths. These dimensions are being supported. The open space on the site is an increase from the previous application. I mentioned that it is concentrated in the front yard, and the landscaping was increased along the edges of the property. That's the reason that there's a reduction in the driveway aisle width, going from 6.3 meters down to 6.1 meters. The parking spaces although the ratio is going from 1.4 to 1.25 spaces per unit. It's a reduction in 8 parking spaces for the development. The developer is proposing this because he feels that a number of the residents of the building will actually be employed in the tourist core, which is within walking distance of the building. There are a number of site-related issues. The property will be subject to site plan control, and we will be addressing the parking layout, landscaping, perimeter fencing, the driveways into the site servicing, all as part of that site plan control mechanism. The driveways at this point are not resolved. There are 2 driveways going into the property. They have submitted a site safety audit, which our staff still would like further investigation. We also note that there's a portion of the parking for Cavendish Manor on these lands that will have to be moved onto the Cavendish Manor property. And I mentioned the Parking and Traffic Division has concerns regarding this site or the safety audit of the 2 driveways. There was our findings then that the R5C zone can be supported, that the density complies with the official plan. The site is on an arterial road where apartment buildings are contemplated. The step building form does create an appearance which is more in keeping with the surrounding area. The R5C zone will contain special provisions to deal with the front yard setback, landscaping, and parking ratios, and the property will be subject to site plan control. Our recommendation, therefore, is that Council could approve the zoning amendment application to change the property to a site-specific residential apartment 5C zone to permit the apartment building having 5 stories, stepping up to 6 stories in the rear, and containing 56 dwelling units. Those are the highlights.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurlwich. And once again, members of the public are advised that failure to make an oral or written submission at this public meeting will result in the Ontario Municipal Board dismissing any referral it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheets will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per Section 34, subsection 19 of the Planning Act. At this time, Council will hear from anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw amendment. Is there anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak? Please come forward. Be kind enough, please, to state your name and to adhere to the 10-minute limit that we do have. Thank you. Your address as well, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Honorable Councilman, my name is Dawn Damiano. I live at 6682 Elanthus Avenue, across from this application. I have no contest with what Alex has said in regards to his support of the application, but what I do want to bring to the attention of this council are things that weren't mentioned. And before you can make a fully informed decision, I think you should hear all the facts. I would like to remind this council that this application came up before you previously and was rejected because the site plan did not fit the parameters of an R5C rating. Alex, if you wouldn't mind me asking a question, is an R5C the maximum residential rating in the books at the moment? Or is there one above that?
Mrs. Damiano, could you be kind enough if you just address your questions through the chair, but we'll just see if there's a number of questions you do have. Okay. Do you have others to him as well?
Pardon?
Do you have a number of the questions that you'd like to ask?
No, that was the only question that I had
to ask. All right, thank you. Mr. Hurlwich, could you answer the question, please, then? Thank you.
Your Worship, the zoning permits up to an R5F, so F. C is kind of in the middle.
Okay, thank you.
The last time I reviewed the zoning, it was under amendment several years ago.
Okay.
But I do know that an R5C, the density now complies. Wonderful. I acknowledge the admirable attempt that they've made. However, their green space and their parking still do not comply with an R5C. Green space, very important. You're 2 minutes outside of the tourist zone. You're within a 5-minute walk of the new casino. Green space is important. You're on an arterial road, Dunn Street, with no parking. You are below the minimum requirement parking for this facility. Where are the additional cars going to park? There's no parking on the side roads. There's no parking on Dunn Street. Anyone who has had any business in the tourist zone knows the difficulty in finding parking there. The minimum parking requirement has to be kept up. These are things that are important. To slide on the density, it's happened before. It's not really an issue. We have no complaints over a residential property. It's an ideal place for an apartment or a condo dwelling. No problem with that. Alex is fully correct there. It mixes well with the infill plan. It's a good place for residential. But this is not an existing building that is being revamped into residential, where they need the industrial zone to be changed to residential and requiring site-specific modifications to comply with the R5C. This is a new development under design. It's being drawn up. The ground hasn't been broken. Why can't they design a plan that fits within the parameter of the residential zone they are requesting? It's not a difficult thing to decrease the footprint of this building on the site plan to make it comply, have the minimum green space, have the minimum parking, fit within what they're asking for. I'm simply asking this council to do their due diligence and uphold the bylaws that they are here and authorized to enforce. I also have serious considerations regarding the dual driveway. It straddles Alanthus Avenue. There is notation in the write-up that I was sent in regards to the possibility of signalization of that intersection. I don't feel as a taxpayer of this city that my money should go towards the expense of signalizing an intersection to benefit the profit margin of a developer. If the Niagara College Maid of the Mist Center, with its size and its parking capacity, is only allowed one egress to Dunn Street, why should City Council create an extremely hazardous situation, which the Traffic Department has confirmed is a hazardous situation the way it's laid out, for the benefit of someone's profit margin? I am asking this City Council either to reject this proposal because it does not comply with the R5C, or at best defer it until such time as the applicant can produce a site plan to go with this application that complies with an R5C rating and which does not require being addressed as part of the site plan approval process. Because once this site plan is approved for rezoning, it's just going to roll downhill through the approval, and they're going to use the argument, well, it was good enough to be rezoned with, why can't it be approved as it is? I'm sorry. If this needs to be addressed in the site plan approval process, then it isn't good enough for the rezoning process either. I'm asking you either defer it until they can correct their site plan to comply and to be of approval status for the site plan approval, or reject it and ask them to come back with a plan that does comply. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Damiano. Thank you. Is there anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak further to this matter? Anyone else other than the applicant who wishes to speak? For the third time, is there anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to this matter? Okay, at this point then, council will hear from the applicant or his representative.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council.
Good evening. Thank you.
Before I get to my PowerPoint presentation, some introductory remarks. On July 20th, my client was before you requesting approval of a 6-story, 58-unit building. The application was denied. However, my client was encouraged that evening by council to return with a revised application, as I believe council supports the creation of new rental housing units in the city and ongoing construction projects over the winter season. Otherwise, he would not have been encouraged to come back. Through consultation with planning staff and senior staff, who I'd like to thank for their time and cooperation, a new application was submitted which would meet planning staff's approval, and if approved by council, will result in construction of the building as soon as possible this winter. Now, before I get to the PowerPoint, just if I could address a couple of comments by Ms. Damiano. We have to keep in mind the original application complied with all of the bylaw requirements, all of them, except landscaping. We were at 30% soft landscaping. With hard landscaping included, we're at 35%. We complied with parking. We complied with all the setbacks. Everything else was complied with. We were asked by council to reconsider our proposal. We sat down with staff, and we were asked to make a compromise. We were asked to increase the landscaping from 30% to 35% if possible. As a result, we had to claw back on the parking. We lost 8 parking spaces. Your planning department had no concerns with that. They rather have more landscaping and less parking. More importantly, your traffic department had no concerns with that. They're okay with the 8 short parking spaces in this proposal. Now, it's easy to pick out the 2 or 3 points where we're asking for site-specific zoning. I'd ask you to think of any application before this council where the application met every single requirement of the zoning. I challenge you to find one that's met every single requirement. Now, moving on to the PowerPoint. Just a basic summary of the changes from the prior application. First of all, from the first slide, sorry. As you've heard, the height's been reduced from 6 stories to 5 stories at the street frontage, stepped up to 6 stories at the rear. Number of units have been reduced from 58 to 56, so we now fully comply with the official plan density requirements. Landscaping has been increased from 30% to 35% of the lot area, once again by removing parking from the site and replacing it with landscaping. The perimeter landscaping has been increased by reducing the driveway aisle width from 6.3 meters to 6.1 meters and reducing the parking standard from 1.4 parking spaces per unit to 1.25 parking spaces per unit. Once again, that was a suggestion of your staff. The goal was to have more landscaping, less concern about parking, less concern about the aisle width, the parking standards, and your traffic department has no concerns with these items. So in summary, all the changes we made were pre-approved by your planning department and your traffic department before we came here this evening. Now, you've heard the specific design details, including number of driveways, parking layout, landscaping, etc., will be addressed during the site plan approval process. Moving on to official plan compliance, and that is your senior planning document. We can talk about the requirements of R4, R3, R5F until the cows come home, but you have to be in compliance with the OP, and we fully comply. Your policy supports between 4 and 6 stories in height, up to a density of 100 units per hectare in the periphery of the residential area. As you've heard, we're at 5 stories at the street frontage, 6 stories at the rear, with 99 units per hectare, and we are in the periphery of the residential area. Next slide, please. Sorry. Therefore, we do fully comply with your official plan. This infill development is compatible with the area as it does not abut residential properties and includes very generous setbacks from all property lines. Now, dealing with the adjacent properties, we have to keep in mind that all of the abutting adjacent properties, none of them are residential. They're all institutional uses. And I challenge you to find another site in the city, a vacant site, where we could have an infill development that's surrounded completely by non-residential uses, as in this case. So all of the adjacent property owners, they all submitted letters a month ago in support of a 6-story proposal, that being Niagara College, La Résidence Joie de Vivre, and Cavendish Manor. We also had the closest residences in the area. We had a letter from the families who own the 5 closest houses to this property on Dunn Street, and they're all in support of this application. Moving on to economic considerations. If this is approved, the applicant will commence construction as soon as permits are available and will not lay off employees during the slow winter construction season. The construction period will be approximately 10 months and will involve over 120,000 labor hours. The estimated annual property tax revenue from this property every year will be $120,000. And upon issuance of the permits, you will receive $305,000 in development charges. What I think is one of the biggest pluses of this development, we're creating 56 new rental housing units within walking distance to the Fallsview Casino, Convention Center, and the major high-rise hotels in the Fallsview area. There is a need for this development. Our client has already obtained 20 individuals who'd like to move in the building. In fact, since the last public meeting, there were 3 people who watched this on TV and called the applicant. So in summary, unlike on July 20th, your planning department is now recommending approval of the application. Therefore, we're requesting council approve the 5 to 6-story, 56-unit proposal because of the following reasons. It is supported by your city's planning department, it meets your official plan, and it meets the provincial policies promoting greater density. It does not abut any residential properties. It is consistent with the prior approvals and opinions of council and planning staff, some of which are in the planning report this evening. Most others were in my PowerPoint presentation last go-around. The proposal is supported by all abutting neighbors. We have written letters of support from all of the abutting neighbors. It will provide new needed rental housing in the area. And finally, and most importantly to my client and his workers, it will result in construction activity and significant development charges and property tax revenue. Those are my submissions, subject to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vaca. Are there any further questions from members of council or those present of Mr. Vaca? No further questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vaca. At this point, then, the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded. In the pleasure of council, Councillor Fisher. Motion to approve by Councillor Fisher, second by Councillor Carriot. Any further discussion? Councillor Wayne?
Thank you. I'm not going to support the motion. I believe it's still an overdevelopment of the site. It's a 6-story building masquerading as a 5-story at the front, and as we were told by staff last meeting, the 6 stories isn't in keeping with the character of the area. Across the street is a 4-story building, which the Ontario Municipal Board determined was an appropriate height for the character of the neighborhood and required a roof feature to provide a visual impression of a 3-story building with units in the attic level. Although staff had then supported 5 stories, the OMB ultimately decided that a lower building was preferred. I honestly don't think that subtracting 2 units makes that much of a difference. Mr. Vaca claims that the lands are not on the periphery of the residential area. Last meeting, staff told us that Mr. Vaca says they're on the periphery of the residential area. Last meeting, the staff told us the lands are not on the peripheral edge. The parking requirement, I fully appreciate what Mrs. Damiano told us about the parking requirements. Where are visitors going to park? There's a real issue with parking in that whole area. I know there's a real issue with density and traffic in that whole area. That's my old ward. I've walked it. I know how many townhouses and apartments and the semis are in that area. It is extremely dense already. I hear about the traffic concerns. You don't want to overdevelop anything there because it's going to add to an already unacceptably dense mix and an unacceptably heavy load of traffic. Atlantis Avenue is a shortcut between Dunn and McLeod. Even casino buses use it. The traffic there is unbelievable, and putting 2 driveways right at that intersection. And Atlantis is divided. It has a boulevard in the middle. There are some real traffic problems there are already people not doing what they're supposed to do in terms of exiting other driveways. I don't see that 2 units makes that much of a difference. The OMB decided that 4 stories was what was appropriate for that area. 6 masquerading as 5 does not fit. I won't support this.
Any other comments from members of council? Yes, Councillor Peter Angel.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that I'm happy that the developer didn't give up on the project, and I give him credit for actually coming back to council with some meaningful changes. The density has been reduced, and as Mr. Hurlovich had mentioned, the building also has a stepped approach. I understand that it might not meet every single requirement of an R5C zoning, but again, I think the staff, the changes or the variances are minor in nature, and I will support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, first of all, I want to personally apologize for the confusion at the last meeting. I think this type of debate and discussion could have happened previously, and unfortunately it didn't, and that's why they are back here, and I'm encouraged. And I appreciate Mr. Vaca's comments. If you drove around the city and tried to find a site that was appropriate for development for apartments, and I want to compliment the developer because there are very few people who are willing to and can invest in rental apartments in any community today, and you can tell by the track record of these people, the developer, the one across the road, which is certainly excellently maintained, and certainly a credit to that corner, looks very well. I think we made the right decision on the property on St. Paul Street, 3 stories, but the work that was done there is certainly something that should be considered for a Trillium Award. They did an excellent job, and I think the neighbors worked out well with the neighbors there in that situation. Here we have the Niagara College, a nursing home, and also a seniors home at the back with a vacant site in between. As Mr. Vaca indicated, there are no applications that ever come forward that do not comply, or that do comply with all of the policies with respect to that. But the main things here that we're talking about, the official plan, one thing that the province has come out very strongly in the last several years, where we used to be very timid about approving multifamily residential developments, high-rise apartments, or at least above 3 stories. They actually are insisting on this type of mix of development take place in infilling situations in their provincial policies. So I think this is an appropriate development for that area. I think it'll. I think the landscaping increase is something that is to the credit of the developer. To suggest that 40 to 35% somebody driving by would notice that, they certainly wouldn't be, and I think it's prudent to put the landscaping in the front to be a showpiece for the development, which this developer has indicated that he does an excellent job with. So I think that this is an appropriate development for the area, and I'd like to see a recorded vote.
Thank you. Councillor Carrio.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to echo Councillor Thompson's commendation of the staff and the developer for coming back. Your Worship, I know staff's worked very hard to come up with something that worked for us as well as the developer. The developer was at the time, after it was turned down last time, I think, ready to give up on this, and our staff jumped in and got him back to the table, and I think this certainly fits with our city and this area. I drive on Dunn Street, Your Worship, every single day. Dunn Street is not an overcrowded street. There is not a traffic problem on Dunn Street whatsoever. If anyone goes up and down Dunn Street, they'll realize it's not a busy street, Your Worship. So I think this is a great development. It's a much-needed housing it's a much-needed rental development for our city. It would be a terrible loss to lose this project, Your Worship, and I'm happy to second it, and I'm glad it's back before us today. Hope Council supports it.
Thank you, Councillor. We do have a request for recorded votes, so I'll make a comment as well that I certainly appreciate the fact the developer has returned. I want to acknowledge the efforts of our CAO in working with our staff and the developer in coming back with an acceptable plan. Certainly the project does complement the area. It does meet the principles of smart growth, and I think that it will be a quality development. So I have no problem as well supporting the application. So I'm going to call for recorded. We have a request for recorded vote. I'm going to ask the clerk to call the vote, please.
Okay, moved by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Carrier, that the recommendation report PD 2009-65 be approved as recommended. Councillor Diodati?
In favor.
Councillor Fisher?
For.
Councillor Iannone is absent. Councillor Carrier?
In favor.
Councillor Maves?
For.
Councillor Pietrangelo?
Aye.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Wing?
Opposed.
Mayor Selsey?
For.
It's approved. Passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you again. Mr. Clerk, would you introduce the next item on the agenda, please? Thank you.
Your Worship, a public meeting is now being convened to consider a proposed amendment to the city zoning bylaw to permit a used car lot at 6006 Thorlstone Road. Notice was given by first-class mail in accordance with the Planning Act on July 31st, 2009, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passage of the zoning bylaw amendment to participate in any site plan process, if applicable, or preserve their opportunity to appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board shall leave their name on the sign and sheets outside the council chamber.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to ask the Director of Planning to explain the purpose and the reason for the proposed bylaw amendment. Again, Mr. Hurlovich.
Thank you, Worship. The photograph on the screen in front of you shows the actual site. So there is an existing building on the property. The parking lot has been used for storage of cars. I believe there's surplus cars that were parked there for the Toyota dealership, which is immediately to the west. You can see a portion of the white Toyota dealership building. The property itself is located on the south side of Thorlstone Road, just to the east of Carroll Avenue. The properties to the north are predominantly commercial properties. To the south is an industrial mall. To the east is a car dealership, which is the GM dealership. To the west is also a car dealership. So it is an area that has been transitioning away from traditional industrial uses toward service commercial type uses. The site plan before you, as I say, there's an existing building on the lot. It's a relatively narrow lot. The building is outlined in red. There will be parking spaces in front, driveway beside the building, and more parking behind the building. There will be some landscaping around the perimeter of the site, as well as a 1.5 meter landscape strip to the north. You can see the pedestrian sidewalk passing through the landscape strip on the top edge of the drawing. The application is to change the zoning from general industrial to a light industrial. The light industrial would permit the property to be used for a used car lot. There are a number of site-specific provisions that are requested to this LI zone. These are largely to reflect the existing conditions of the site. The land is designated industrial in the official plan. The official plan intends that there be a gradation of industrial use or zones between lighter industrial uses such as residential to the north, and which are more sensitive from heavier industrial uses to the south. We found that the property does comply with the official plan in as much as the light industrial reflects the current market trends away from manufacturing and towards, as I mentioned, the service commercial type use. Proposed car lot does not create any land use conflicts, and the impact on the viability of the industrial lands to the south will not be affected either. The light industrial zone does provide for a transition between heavier industrial uses to the south, and there are adequate landscape standards that would ensure the aesthetic qualities of the area. The property is currently zoned general industrial, doesn't permit a used car lot. The applicant is requesting a light industrial zone, which does permit a used car lot. The applicant is on a commercial corridor, as I mentioned, Thorlestone Road. The property has a number of site-specific requests. The lot frontage is currently the lot frontage requirement is 30 meters. The applicant has 19.5 meters. That's the width of the lot. There's not very much we can do about that. The lot area is 2,000 square meters, which would also is the minimum requirement. They have 1,619 square meters, so just slightly under the minimum lot area requirement. The side yard requirement is again an existing building on the site, so rather than having 3.5 meters, there are only 2 meters of setback for the building. It's on the west side, the side closest to the Toyota dealer. And then there's a request for reduction in the road widening. The zoning bylaw currently protects a 16.76 wide strip from the original center line of Thorlestone Road. However, the region has updated its standards and requires only 13.1 meters from the center line of the road, and so therefore we don't have any issue with recognizing that in our zoning bylaw. The applicant is asking for reduction in the front yard landscape space and is proposing a 1.5 meter wide landscape strip. This is exactly the same as was provided for the Toyota dealer to the west. Therefore, we can support it, although it amounts to a 13% reduction. The development, we find, will be compatible with the adjacent development. Therefore, it's our findings that the application does comply with the official plan. It does provide for gradation of industrial uses. The site-specific provisions recognize the existing configuration of the site, and the used car agency will be a compatible use with the commercial and service commercial uses in the area. Therefore, staff is recommending that council could approve the zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the site as light industrial, which will permit the site to be used as a used car lot. Those are the highlights.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurlovich. And once again, members of the public are advised that failure to make an oral or written submission at this public meeting will result in the Ontario Municipal Board dismissing any referral that it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheets will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per Section 34, subsection 19 of the Planning Act. At this time, council will hear from anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw amendment. Is there anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak? Once again, is there anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw amendment? The third time, there appears to be no one. At this time, then, council will hear from the applicant or his representative. Good evening.
Thank you. Your Worship, member of councils, Michael Allen, architect, representing Mr. Angelo Marino on the property. I believe the application is fairly straightforward. I'll just interject the fact that you're perhaps familiar with International Auto Vision, their business currently operating on Montrose Road. Their intent, if successful with this application this evening, is to relocate that business to Thorlestone Road, where they feel it will operate in a better situation. So with that, if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen. Are there any questions from members of council of Mr. Allen? Guess not. Thank you very much for your submission.
Thank you.
This time, then, the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded. The pleasure of council. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Maves. Any further comments or questions? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Members of council, I have a few comments I'd like to begin with this evening by offering again our condolences to Tricia Sika from our finance department on the passing of her mother, Mrs. Frances Risdale, a well-known realtor and resident of Niagara Falls, as well to Tony Lynn Perrier on the passing of her uncle and retired employee of the City of Niagara Falls, Mr. Richard Moody, and to Dave Jackson in our Information Services Department on the passing of his stepmother, Mrs. Mary Merritt Jackson, wife of Don Jackson, who appeared before us this evening. You will recall as well that the Niagara Falls Lions Club is working in partnership with the city's Parks, Recreation and Culture Department to develop a revitalized community park at their location on Drummond Road. And to this end, I would encourage council to consider supporting the Lions Club fundraising dinner on Saturday, September 12th, from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. to benefit this revitalization. Tickets are $30 each and must be purchased in advance. If you'd wish to call 289-296-9461 to purchase tickets or to call the mayor's office for further information, we'd be glad to accommodate you. Also as well, Go Service in Niagara Falls continues to be a positive addition to the city. For the 22 operational dates the service has been in place, there has been a total ridership of over 32,691 people, approximately 1,500 riders per day of travel. So it's maintaining its close to its 1,500-day average, which I really appreciate the fact that people are utilizing the service. Again, I wanted to acknowledge all those who are taking advantage of the service and certainly welcome those who use the service to maintain it until the October 12th deadline for this year's season. As well, I have some bittersweet news to announce. I note that we have a departure. We have Allison Bell, our reporter from Niagara this week, is leaving us. This is her last council meeting. She's been accepted at law school in Ottawa, which I believe is her hometown. So congratulations to Allison. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Thank you so much. We wish you well and hope you'll have fond memories of your times at council in Niagara Falls. Thank you. This concludes my comments for this evening. We'll move on to communications and comments of the city clerk. Item 1, we have a request from Rocco Beck, Sullivan Manny, to requesting a waiver of the application fees for AM 2008-15, a zoning bylaw amendment to application on Dunn Street, which we heard earlier this evening. Pleasure of council. Yes.
Receive and file. I noted from the July 20th staff report that through the preliminary consultation process, staff examined with the owners and their architects various options which would allow them to achieve a design in keeping with the area. Those weren't accepted by the applicant, so really if they'd worked with staff back then, they wouldn't have had to come back.
We have a motion to receive and file. Is there a seconder to that? There appears to be no seconder. Okay. Motion by Councillor Thompson.
Well, I was going to move it, but I read the report, and there's been, I guess, a lot of staff work and effort put into the application, but I'll make a motion to put it on the floor for approval.
Motion for approval, seconded by Councillor Carrio. Any discussion? Having seen none, all those in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 opposed. We have 1. Motion's carried. Thank you very much. We have a request from Jane Pepino from Airden Burles requesting council consider a planning report prepared by Urban Strategies regarding zoning bylaw amendment application AM 2009-08, Hospitality Resorts, Inc., and requesting to speak to this matter. Moved by Councillor Wing, seconded by, permission to speak, seconded by anybody? Councillor Peter Angelo. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. Opposed? We have a conflict. Pardon? Opposed? Okay, well, all right. So we have approval actually to allow Mrs. Pepino to speak. Please come forward.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much for the courtesy you've extended to me. I will be brief because I will restrict my submissions to procedure as opposed to the substance. As you recall, the planning opinion that was placed before you was extensive and lengthy, and I don't intend to go through it this evening. My request, rather, is that council send it to your staff so that you have an opportunity to have fully reviewed, with staff input, all of the issues that are bearing on this matter. When I appeared in front of council last go-round, we had the staff report for approximately 5 days, and I think it's fair to say that there was no consideration given to the appropriateness of allowing the majority of the parking as opposed to a small amount, or the previous only 30% permitted, as off-site parking. Equally, there was absolutely no consideration in the staff report of council's long-term commitment to and plans for creation of an open space, continuous and trail system using the hydro right-of-way and the address, or to address the numerous recent council positions that even interim parking on the hydro right-of-way in the circumstances where the trail system had been planned was not in the public interest. And finally, whether hydro land should be used for parking on a permanent basis. Those were all issues that were not specifically addressed. Now, interestingly enough, and I've gone over the minutes in a number of, reviewed them a number of times, and council's decision on the 29th of June was to, first of all, approve recommendations 2 and 3 of your staff report that included the opportunity to have parking provided off-site, and also to ensure that that there be that they reduce the amount of required parking on-site from 85% to 30%, and then secondly, to allow it to be, or more appropriately, thirdly, I guess, allow it to be placed on the hydro right-of-way. But interestingly enough, that was made conditional in my reading to the additional requirement, quote, that the city solicitor be satisfied with the validity of the lease between Hydro One Networks and the applicant. So that was question number 1 to the city solicitor. Is there a valid lease? And secondly, the authority of the applicant to have permanent, not interim, not temporary, not 20 years, not until 2020, but permanent parking on the leased lands. And it's my respectful submission that that proviso, after having not only sat through the debate, but also reviewed it by way of video subsequently, that the discussion of council and the requirement that the matter not be brought back until the city solicitor was satisfied with the authority of the applicant to have permanent parking was based at least on a couple of points. The first was that the letter that was produced by Mr. Lustig was not on hydro letterhead, it was just on some person's letterhead. Secondly, the letter produced by Mr. Lustig provided no evidence that the signatory had the authority to bind hydro. Next, council did not have before it the actual lease to determine what its terms were. I did advise you of that. And finally, and in any event, the letter that Mr. Lustig provided really only went so far as to say that the person who was writing not on hydro letterhead was aware of the application, but did not go so far as to say that, and hydro hereby binds itself to providing parking on a permanent basis. So I think, taken as a whole, all of that discussion and that information, or more appropriately, lack of information, was what led council to require that the city solicitor be satisfied with the validity of the lease and the authority of the applicant to have permanent parking. But we see no report from the city solicitor this evening. So as member of the public, there's no opportunity to understand whether the city solicitor is satisfied or the basis for that. Now, I made an inquiry of your clerk. He did say that the city solicitor reviews every bylaw and therefore implicitly must be satisfied with the bylaw. With the greatest of respect, that does not satisfy the precondition that was laid down by this council on the 29th of June. Secondly, the staff report in the minutes, particularly at page 5 of the minutes, indicate that the bylaw should contain a provision which necessitates required parking being provided, quote, within 6 months of the termination of the lease, end quote. And on a review of the bylaw, that no longer is included within the draft that is before you this evening. And I say, therefore, that that, too, is a change to council's direction. Or put differently, council's direction has not been satisfied by the bylaw before you. So, additionally, and here's my final procedural point, the letter from Urban Strategies and the very careful planning opinion laid out therein is one that was not available to you or placed before you at the time you had your previous debate and discussion. It is not similar to, as Mr. Lustig suggested, having evidence after a trial judge has refused a decision and trying to go back. This instead is something that I had brought to council in what I thought was complete fairness, given the new provisions of the Planning Act that allow any appeal hearing officer at the Ontario Municipal Board to have information put in front of it to allow that hearing officer to decide whether it might have made a material difference to council's decision if council had considered it. And we can do it now or we can do it later, and I thought in fairness we should at least give council the opportunity to do it now. And so it is for that reason that the material was placed before you, and it is for that reason that I ask council to deem the enactment or any action on the planning, on the enactment of the bylaw this evening as premature, until after you get the city solicitor report, until after you satisfy yourself that it fully incorporates your directions with respect to its terms and conditions, and finally, until after you have been fully informed by a report from your staff of all of those additional matters that have been opined in the Urban Strategies letter. Thank you for your patience. I'm happy to answer any questions should council have any.
Okay. Are there any questions of Ms. Pepino? Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Beeman to give us an opinion with respect to your comments. And also, I think, Council, we do have Mr. Lustig here as well, who represents the applicant, and you may wish to allow him to speak as well for the sake of equity.
I actually think Mr. Lustig should speak before I do.
Okay, thank you. Council, motion to approve Mr. Lustig speak, moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Maves. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Mr. Lustig, welcome. Thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship, and thank you very much. For the record, my name is Ed Lustig, and I'm with the law firm Broderick & Partners in Niagara Falls. And I appear tonight on behalf of Niagara Hospitality Resort, Inc., who own the Hilton property and are the applicants in AM 2009-008. Now, that application was the culmination, or the hearing of the application on the 29th of June was a culmination of a proper application that was submitted by my client in accordance with the Planning Act. They submitted an application to deal with exactly what the requirements are of the Planning Act and exactly what your staff asked in the way of information and other material. And they submitted it to the city staff. The city staff reviewed the application fully. They circulated the information to all of the commenting agencies, none of whom had any difficulties with it. They considered, the city staff did, all of the information, and in particular I would remind you that a lot of the information, and I'm not going to get into the planning report of urban strategy because I think it's entirely inappropriate to do so, but the information in that report is all material that the city staff would have considered because it's all material that is in the city's hands. In other words, it's not new information. The opinion is a new information that was opined subsequent to the closing of the meeting on June 29th, but the information is all existing information that Mr. Hurlovich and his staff had an opportunity to review, and that Canadian Niagara Hotels had the opportunity to submit because they, like everybody else, had a 28-day opportunity with notice to come here. As tonight you've allowed people to speak in a specific order to a rezoning application, make their position known, and they didn't raise any of those issues at that meeting. And so it's my opinion, and this is not just my opinion, but you went from Ms. Pepino to me, but in between your illustrious city clerk has a memo as well that really speaks to exactly the same thing as I'm speaking to, which is that once a public meeting under the Planning Act is concluded, and you do this all the time, you have these applications circulated, you give notice, you allow people to speak, you close the meeting, you then make a decision. And once that's done, it's not appropriate to come back with new planning information, suggesting that it's actually new planning information when it's really not. The right thing to do is to pass your bylaw, which is on tonight, and which we've waited for about 2 months for. We would have been happy if it had been passed the night of the meeting, and if it had, this opinion wouldn't have come forward because there wouldn't have been any time to do that. And many municipalities do consider bylaws on the same night as the meetings to approve applications are heard. So the appropriate thing to do, unless there's a technical problem with the bylaw, and that's open for discussion. I mean, if you get a bylaw on your agenda that isn't correct, then it's quite open to discuss it if it's incorrect. But it's certainly not appropriate to reopen a public meeting, not only because it's unfair to my client, not only because it's contrary to the process, but it's also totally dangerous for you in the future. Every successful applicant in the future, if you allow this to occur, every unsuccessful applicant or every unsuccessful person in the future will come back to you and tell you, I've just got a new opinion. Why don't you listen to it and open up the hearing again? On and on and on it would go. And the purpose of this whole process is to come to a decision in a timely manner. And there are appeal rights available those appeal rights go to the Ontario Municipal Board. And in fact, following the meeting on the 29th, Mr. DiCienzo, Michael, spoke to the press about how he was going to take this application to the Ontario Municipal Board because it was, in his view, according to the press, unfair. That was the basis. Not planning, but it was unfair because he wasn't given the opportunity, he said in the newspaper, to do what we have, which is to lease property and use it for parking. Well, everybody had the same opportunity, and there are other properties that have that same facility that use leased or licensed properties for parking off-site. So the right thing to do is to do what your illustrious city clerk has suggested, and that is to receive and file the information from Ms. Pepino, and to, if she wishes, to suggest to her that she goes to the Ontario Municipal Board. It's certainly not in our interest to delay things again and have further consideration. I don't think it's in your interest to do so. The board is set up to do this. In fact, if you read my opinion or my letter, what I referred to were the sections that she's referred to in her material, which are sections that give the municipal board, not the council, the municipal board, if an appeal is filed, the opportunity to direct it to council. If an appeal is filed, which it hasn't been in this case, and if the municipal board decides that there's a reason, they're satisfied that there's a reason, that is that this information might have a material impact on the council's decision. None of that has occurred. There's no appeal. There's no determination by the board. So this is out of sync. And it's out of sync for clearly strategic reasons. There's no planning information before you. That's a problem for them on appeal. That's what they want to try to get you to do. Get the planning before the council so that they're in a better position when an appeal occurs. Don't do this. It's a bad precedent. It's unfair to my client. With respect to a couple of the points that she made, the 6-month period for compliance if we lose the opportunity to have parking. Well, that was a provision that was taken out at staff's insistence because they didn't want to give us 6 months to comply. So that if we were ever to lose the opportunity to license that property, on the day we lose that opportunity, rather than 6 months hence, we would be in contravention of the bylaw. And the loss of that opportunity to use licensed property for parking is our problem. It's our liability. That's who would bear the brunt or bear the liability and the responsibility. We would be in contravention. We wouldn't be able to serve our clients. So it's not in our interest to lose that license. In fact, if you really think about it, because there's been this discussion about parking that is owned rather than parking that's leased and licensed, and you have approved leased and licensed properties as well as owned properties, but an owner of a property that was used for off-site parking could dispose of that property. They could dispose of that property and they wouldn't have that off-site parking to cover the requirements of the bylaw. So they'd be in exactly the same position as us in the event that our license was terminated. Now, we have a good license, and I submitted the letter that was not requested by me, but was requested by the city to support the application that we made last meeting. That letter was sent by Hydro One to you, not to me, in order to satisfy you that there was authority. And it was an email, which this is modern technology. These things are done by email. It was very specific to this application. And I can tell you, and Mr. Beeman knows this because I sent him this, after you approved the application on the 29th of June, we got a further letter from Hydro One congratulating us on getting that approval through. So they're not under any illusions about what we're doing. In fact, in that letter, they look forward to increasing the rent with us when the next 5-year period comes up. So there's no doubt that we have a license. There's no doubt that anyone who's in the same class of off-site parking technically or theoretically has the potential of voiding that right because they could sell their property, they could lose the license, they could end the lease. But those are not things that you should be concerning yourself about at this stage. They're completely contrary to the client's or to the developer or the owner's own interest, and he would do everything and anything he could to avoid that happening. So, again, I would respectfully suggest to you that you let the process proceed in the appropriate manner. The board is here. The board is aware or will be aware of this application if it's appealed. They'll consider this new planning information. They may or may not admit it. We'll have a hearing, and justice will be done. And those are my submissions. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you very much for your submissions, Mr. Lustig. Are there any questions of Mr. Lustig? Okay, thank you. Question?
No question.
Okay, Mr. Beeman, did you wish to make any comment?
I do think that certainly this would be an atrocious precedent if this tactic were to become something that we had to look forward to at these, whenever we try to pass the bylaw after the public meeting, because that's going to cut down on council's ability to modify the bylaw at the public meeting and have it brought back to them later. Certainly, anyone who's skilled in this area representing their client is going to want the bylaw passed that night so that they don't that anybody who's opposed to them doesn't have time to go away and woodshed a witness to get ready to beat you up when you bring the bylaw in. And I have to point out, these sections of the Act that we're being referred to in the Planning Act come about as a result of a case that Burlington brought that went to the Court of Appeal and they got hammered on. Because what Burlington was upset by is they had a developer who would come with 2 sheets of paper to council, stand there and say, I want to build this. Council would go, well, what is it? He would then rocket off to the OMB with 40, and then file 40 page volumes of evidence to support his case, and council would never have seen any of it. So these things would get approved. Council felt they were being excluded from the decision-making process. The purpose of these provisions is to try to limit the amount of evidence that ends up in front of the OMB that wasn't seen by council. That's what it's for. And as Mr. Lustig points out, this tactic is designed to try to get around that problem because they didn't bring a planning report before you when you made your decision. Now, as far as the validity of the lease, there is one signed by both parties. It's been produced. We've seen it. It's there. It's the same sort of lease that are used by a couple of other, at least that I know of, property owners here in town who have permanent parking on hydro right-of-ways. And as far as I can see, the same wording, this clause that's causing all the grief here, is in a number of other leases that I'm aware of that I've been able to locate. One in St. Catharines, there's one in Kitchener. And unfortunately, the fellow that I really would like to pick the brain of on this particular thing that was on holidays during the course of this. Now, having said that, I think the risk that is inherent to having off-site parking is well known to this council. The parking could get alienated from the property where the land use is. And that can happen, as Mr. Lustig points out, whether the property is owned by the applicant or whether it is leased by the applicant. And I'm aware of a case where the fellow did own both. It was in Port Dalhousie and St. Catharines, parking for the Red Lion Tavern, if any of you are familiar with it. And it happened that there was a mortgagee that took a mortgage on both parcels of land. When they came to collect, it was in their strategic interest to sell the parking and leave the Red Lion without parking. That gave us a problem as a city, but it was great for the bank. They went ahead, they got a lot of money for the parking lot because it was it was able to be added to another property to assemble a nice parcel, and off they went. So, I mean, that risk is there unless, as part of for creating the off-site parking, you force the landowners to tie their lands together. As Mr. Lustig points out, we got a letter from Hydro congratulating them on getting the bylaw through. The lease itself makes no distinction between permanent parking and temporary parking. That's in the zoning bylaw. The lease talks about the difference between required parking and surplus parking. The parking that's been on the hydro lands, much of it has always been required. Hydro's gone merrily along and haven't done anything. So now, of course, they got their hand out, they want more money. But they haven't said get off. They haven't said you got no deal. They just said they've asked the Cosmo interests for more money. So finally, I reiterate once again, council has approved a number of these off-site parking arrangements, and I think the practical reason why they do is because they know that the entrepreneurs who build these big hotels need the parking. They're gonna find it if there's a problem. They're not going to wait for me to prosecute them. They're not going to wait for an injunction application to come in there, because they've got to operate their business. They're resourceful people. They know what they're doing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beeman. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you. I guess the appropriate thing would be to make a quick motion for deferral, or not for deferral, but to receive and file. But I think there has to be some comments made. I think I was responsible for making the motion, and I took very seriously the information that was submitted by Urban Strategies. In fact, worked for many years with Urban Strategies. In fact, they produced our tourism area development strategy and recommended the 30 stories, which council never agreed with as far as the height of buildings, the Grand Boulevard, which the council rejected, and many other things, in my opinion. But I read the report and the information, and as Mr. Lustig has said, there's nothing new there that the staff didn't know, and that anybody who's been around here for a while was not aware of. I think it's been very plain to anybody who has watched council that they are very supportive of off-site parking. In fact, both applicants, or both developers here in the council chamber, both have received approvals for off-site parking, and I think that's a method that has to be utilized to protect the escarpment and to get the parking off so you can have better and more green space around the major development. So I think that the council has demonstrated that 18 different times. In fact, the Marriott Hotel, I think, has 0 parking. All of their parking is off-site. So that's not something that is foreign to this council in their decision-making process. In discussions, I heard that you're making a mistake because this is permanent parking. Well, it's not permanent parking because it's all controlled by leases. The Ontario Hydro, in fact, if you talk to them these days, if you can get a 5-year lease for 3 or 4 consecutive terms, you're very lucky. And if you can get more than that, they are totally in control, and it isn't permanent parking, in my opinion, and I've given this a great deal of thought to make sure that I'm clear in my mind with respect to that. So whether it was coming back to us in the future or whatever, I've given this a great deal of thought, and I'm confident with the previous decision that I made with respect to this. I think that we have a wonderful opportunity for probably one of the finest hotels that have been built in this city, and probably from here to Toronto. You have thousands of people working there, and if they ever get to the point where that lease runs out, or whether they don't have an opportunity to utilize that property, what do they have to do? They have to go out and quickly find, at whatever expense, another piece of property to accommodate their parking, because they're in business and they have to have it available. So it has to be available one way or the other. So I would make a motion that we receive the submissions and let the process carry on. And I'll have a recorded vote.
Yes. Appreciate that. We'll second it. We have a recorded vote requested as well. Councillor Wing.
Thank you. It is permanent parking. I recall, Your Worship, reading aloud to you from the June 29th staff report, where it was specifically referred to in that report as being permanent parking. I believe there is a technical problem with this bylaw. It contradicts about 20 years of study findings and planning policies adopted by this council. And I have a real problem with the volume of what wasn't seen by council on June 29th, and I've done some research since then. And it's amazing what staff neglected in their report. You can go back to the greening plan for Niagara Falls, adopted on June 19th, 1990, where the city is to encourage the development and enhancement of buffer areas with substantial greening between land uses which may be incompatible, and one of them is residential commercial. Buffer lands are to be set aside in order to minimize aesthetic impacts due to vision, sound, vibration, dust, etc. And that greening plan specifically refers to these hydro lands as being of importance to the greening plan. And there's a map folded into the plastic pocket in the back, and there is this hydro corridor. And parcels 3 and 4 are clearly marked, and it says every attempt shall be made to retain such lands under public ownership to ensure the availability of such lands for public and green space functions. Then you go to the Niagara Falls Tourism Master Plan Final Report, March 1992. The encroachment and impact of tourism uses onto adjacent lands, particularly residential neighborhoods, has been identified as issues of concern. And they're talking about buffering, landscaping, decreased intensity of use as ways to reduce conflicts between commercial and adjacent uses. This goes against all these findings. Niagara Falls Transportation Master Plan shows this hydro corridors to have a recreational pathway constructed on it. The Streetscape Master Plan from October 2001 refers to the extensive trails and bikeways master plan and mentions this route. The TAD study, the vision from June of '98, has in the physical setting has a legend which shows this open space running from McLeod Road to the north limit of the map. On that space is parcels 3 and 4. The TAD study from June of '98 not only shows this land, but discusses how a significant open space system shall be developed throughout the tourist area. The Tourism Policy Review Implementation Handbook from 2004 has a section called Remember the Third Tier, the neighborhoods. The transition of use between the neighborhoods and the Central Tourist District is frustrated by off-site parking for hotels and land use compatibility issues. And it talks about how off-site parking on the hydro corridor is seen as a threat by stable residential neighborhoods. And concerns were raised about the incompatibility of lights, car noise late at night, and the concern that the presence of this use is going to increase pressures for tourist-related development to leapfrog the corridor and open up the neighborhood to tourist commercial development pressures. And there is a lot of stuff in here about the stable urban boundary principle. The hydro corridor should be reconfirmed as an urban separator between the tourist area and the residential lands to the west in order to create a stable boundary. That's these lands that we're talking about. And it just goes on about what they're recommending for these lands as a separator, buffer, and transitional area between the residential neighborhoods and tourist land uses. In fact, that was 7D of the accompanying staff report from the Chief Administrative Officer, which was adopted on that date. The historic Drummondville Community Improvement Plan, Parcel 4 is actually in the CIP area. It says, at present, the hydro corridor traversing the study area from north to south presents both a physical and visual barrier to development. However, the open space buffer and trail corridor uses provided under the hydro corridor secondary land use project would reprogram this space to create a more attractive open space linkage. And it talks about how that area will be strengthened by improving the quality and accessibility of its parks and open space and the importance of it. The historic Drummondville Urban Design Guidelines reinforce the importance of doing exactly what's laid out. There was a secondary land use plan which this council approved and submitted to the region in 2005, and the region approved and supported it and sent it on to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. The regional Niagara Bikeway Master Plan also shows this corridor in there as part of the regional bikeways network. And now we're going to put parking there instead of the recreational uses that are planned by both this municipality and the region, instead of the buffering that's been repeatedly called for since June of 1990. And this is why didn't the staff put this in the report that was before us on June 29th? Why has it all been so silent on these issues? There is a technical problem with this bylaw. It goes against all these past studies and past policies adopted by this very same council. There's no way I'm supporting this motion.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from members of council? We do have requests for recorded vote, and members of council, I certainly will support the receiving and filing of this matter. We have dealt with the matter. Councillor Maves?
Your Worship, I'd like to hear the motion again because I think it's a little different than what we had, what I had originally thought it was going to be. Well, what is the motion?
Mr. Clerk? Receive and file.
I asked for clarification from Councillor
That's what I
Thompson.
thought.
He concurred that it was to receive and file as per staff's recommendation.
Thank you.
As I said, we do have a recorded vote requested, and I wanted to say that I'm very proud of this development, the fact that the developer has proceeded to build what he said he would build. He has produced over almost 500 new jobs this year alone, almost 1,000 jobs on that site, and I would defy anybody to suggest that this council wouldn't assist the new industry coming to town. This is our form of industry. I'm very proud to say that we have 500 people working in our city that normally would not be, and I'm really pleased that that's happening. So I certainly think we've been through this process. We've heard comments from our city solicitor. We've heard submissions from both solicitors, and I think the matter has been dealt with and aired fully. So I have no problem in supporting this matter. So we'll call the clerk. Mr. Clerk, call the recorded vote, please.
Yep. Councillor Diodati?
In favor?
Councillor Fisher?
Support.
Councillor Iannone is absent. Councillor Carriel?
Conflict.
Conflict, right. Councillor Maves?
Yes.
Councillor Peter Angelo?
Aye.
Councillor Thompson?
Yes.
Councillor Wing?
Opposed.
Mayor Selsey?
For.
Motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Move on to the next item on the agenda, members of council. It's the correspondence received from Ms. Jane Vahino with regard to her client, Crosslink Corp., continued interest in the transit lands by Crosslink. The recommendation is referred to staff. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, I think why there wasn't a response or why there couldn't have been some dialogue and discussion. We're open to anybody to come and talk about any progressive development, and hopefully this will bring some positive opportunities for the city, and I would move we refer to staff.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Maves. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Move on to the request for number 3 from Mr. Ivo Koya, requesting the council reconsider its decision regarding parking restrictions on Forest Glen Drive. We have a memo from the clerk as well. Recommendations receive and file this correspondence. Pleasure, council. Councillor Thompson.
Could we defer this till we have an opportunity to hear from Mr. Dren? I had some questions about it, the merit of the suggestions being made. I don't know. I haven't talked with Mr. Koya, but he lives on the street, and I think most of the submissions that were made at the time were from the condominium development there. I'm just wondering, and it's my opinion, whether there is some merit in what he's suggesting, and I wouldn't know until I heard from an expert, Mr. Carl Dren.
We have a request to defer this matter, seconded by Councillor Carriel. No debate on that. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Move on to the next item. Niagara Health System responds to council's request for public information, again for the information of council. Receive and file. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Fisher. All those in favor? Motion is approved. Move on to the next item, 4B, resolution supporting the call for moratorium on major health care restructuring decisions by the OMA. Recommendation?
No, moving that we support
Okay.
the call for moratorium.
All right, there's a second to that motion. Councillor Diodati, any comments further? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Town of Fort Erie, again, resolution requesting the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care continue to fund nurses to manage the EMS patients in a transitory unit until a sustainable program is in place. Recommendation for the consider council. Support by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Wing. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Item 5A, we have a request from the Canadian Society for Training and Development that requests the September 21st to 25th, 2009 be proclaimed as Learn at Work Week in the City of Niagara Falls. Moved by Councillor Carriel, seconded by Councillor Diodati. All those in favor? Motion is carried. We have a request for the month of September being proclaimed as Childhood Cancer Awareness Day by the Pediatric Oncology Group of Ontario in the City of Niagara Falls, moved by Councillor Carrio, seconded by Councillor Fisher. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Request from M&M Meat Shops requesting that September 17, 2009 be proclaimed as National Family Dinner Night. Donations will be made to the Crohn's and Colitis Foundations of Canada. Moved by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Once again, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. And we have a request from the Canadian Kennel Club requesting that September 19th and 26th be proclaimed as Responsible Dog Ownership Week. Approval of Council. Moved by Councillor Diodati, seconded by Councillor Peter Angelo. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Move on to corporate service matters. Is there anyone present who has any interest in the following property matters? I'm going to ask at this time if there anyone present who has interest in the Niagara Peninsula Energy proposed purchase from the City of Niagara Falls, the Montgomery Street purchase right-of-way. Is there anyone here present with regard to the McLeod Road cost-sharing agreement?
No, that's
separate?
pulled.
That's pulled? Sorry, that's pulled. That's right. Okay. So, pleasure of council.
Move the sale of the property to NPI.
Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Carrio. Any comments further? Having seen none? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Move on to item number 3, CD 2009-11, the renaming of Highway 420, I should say, Part 2. Councillor Peter Angelo.
Thanks, Your Worship. Back in July, I did have a chance to meet with Mr. Arafita, our city clerk, and we did pare it down to 5 different choices. They're in the report. Your Worship, I went around and spoke to every member of council that is here tonight, and we've come up with at least 3 of them that we really like. And what I'd like to do, Your Worship, is I'd like to make a motion that we put these on the website and we let the public decide which one they would choose. So the 3 names, Your Worship, that I'm going to put forward is Niagara Memorial Veterans Highway, Niagara Veterans Way, and Niagara Falls Expressway. And I would make that as a motion.
Okay, moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Diodati. Any further comment or question? Councillor Thompson?
I wonder if we could also send them to the veterans organizations, the Legion branches, to the president and the executive, just to have some input from them. Particularly, we've had the debate about whether it should be Niagara Veterans Way or Niagara Memorial Veterans Way. I think the memorial, is important because of the memorial arenas that will be going out for sale, and it's appropriate that we recognize that. But I think the veterans should have a say in that before we make a final decision.
It's a good comment. Councillor Peter Angelo, you're in favor of that?
Your Worship, I don't mind sending them notification. I would imagine that they're all going to be involved in the process anyway because they've been involved in the process so far.
Okay, to meet with your approval as well, Councillor Diodati. Okay, so amend the motion. Councillor Wing.
I just suggest that letter to the Legions should mention that we have no control over the upkeep of that particular section of highway, and that should be considered when they're deliberating if they really want that to honor the veterans of this area.
It's a provincial matter, as we know. It's a provincial highway. So, okay. Okay. Yes, Councillor Thompson.
Actually, when we come back with the signing, it would probably be appropriate that underneath that they could have, "This is maintained by the provincial government."
Okay. Yes. Yes. We'll call the vote if we can, please. All those in favor? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Ratification and camera recommendations.
Just one item, Your Worship, that the update on the live adult businesses bylaw be received by council.
Okay. Motion to approve. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, second by Councillor Diodati. Once again, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Move on to the consent agenda.
Move the consent agenda in its entirety.
Okay, moved in entirety by Councillor Carrio, second by Councillor Peter Angelo. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Motion is carried. Yes, Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I just wondered if the People Mover update, in the original discussions we had the last time, there was always a phase 2 that was involved, and I wouldn't want to have that go by the boards completely. Phase 2 was the ultimate loop system or a more suitable technology utilized for moving people. So the rubber tire was phase one. Phase two would be the still keeping that in the back of our mind, and may in fact be the only way we're going to get the $25 million out of the federal government. So I would like to include that. I'd make a motion that we include phase three in the comments of the people who were updated.
I'm just confused. You said phase two, now you're talking about phase three?
No, phase two.
Phase two?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that has been, Councillor, that has been part of our discussions all along.
Okay, but
So,
it wasn't prominent in the report.
did you want to pose a question to in particular, Mr. Todd?
No, just as long as it's there, I make a motion that it be kept in the report.
Yeah, it is. I think as well it's understood, so that's fine. Just a motion, seconded by, to formalize it, by Councillor Fisher. All those in favor of incorporating that? So moved. Okay, thank you. Already move on to bylaws. Sorry, Councillor Wing.
There was an item in the consent agenda I just wanted to quickly comment on. It was the Mewburn Road Bridge temporary closure. I'm getting reports of dumping out there, including a box of kittens about 8 weeks old, and also condoms and other kind of hazardous litter are starting to be found there. So perhaps staff can do something to...
We have had the same reports, Councillor, and I sent a memo to our district commander with regard to the Niagara Regional Police Service. We've asked them to step up their surveillance if they could, please, in that area, and so they are aware of that situation, and we've asked the neighbors to be vigilant as well. So that matter is being dealt with by the police. Okay, thank you. Move on to bylaws. Can I have a motion to introduce the bylaws? Bylaws be given a first reading. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo. I'm sorry. Additional bylaws. Yes, sorry, Mr. Clerk.
Just some changes to the bylaws related to the McLeod Road cost sharing item that was pulled. The related bylaw 2009-140 is pulled. There's also an additional bylaw in your handouts, and that's authorizing municipal bylaw enforcement officers. So the numbering will be a little different than outlined here in the agenda, but the confirmatory bylaw will still be 2009-144.
Thank you again, and have a motion to introduce the bylaws. Bylaws given a first reading. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, second by Councillor Diodati. Once again, Council has heard the motion. Any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Wing.
I just wanted to go on record as opposed to the one which is listed in our agenda as 2009-139 and the one which is listed in our handouts agenda as 2009-142.
Okay, so noted. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Bylaws 2009-135 to 2009-144 read a first time.
I have a motion to give the bylaws a second and third reading. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, second by Councillor Diodati. Once again, Council has heard the motion. Any comments or questions? Having seen none, all those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Bylaws 2009-135 to 2009-144 read a second and third time.
Thank you very much. Any new business? Councillor Peter Angelo.
Thanks, Your Worship. And I know that I've asked for this before, but I guess through you to Mr. Dulovic, I'll ask for it once again. I understand that it's the region that controls the painting of the lines. But at the intersection of Montrose and Thurlstone Road, if you're heading south on Montrose and you approach the lights and you're making a left-hand turn going east on Thurlstone Road, it would seem reasonable that there would be a dotted line letting you know that you go into the left-hand lane and that people making a right from Montrose Road that are going north, making a right going east on Thurlstone, that they would be directed into the south lane. Your Worship, it would alleviate a lot of the traffic concerns. I know I hear from people all the time, even Councillor Diodati, that the left turn signal isn't long enough. I don't know that particularly that's the exact problem. I think if people knew that they were entitled to the left lane, that would speed up traffic as well. So perhaps we can start with a painted line there. I know that it's there at other intersections, so why shouldn't it be there at that one?
Certainly, yeah. We want to make a motion to that effect that we have our staff pursue it. Moved by Councillor Peter Angelo, seconded by Councillor Diodati. Again, any comments or questions? All those in favor? Motion is carried. I think our staff has heard that, so no problem there. Councillor Diodati.
Thank you, Worship. Your Worship, I received a number of calls from people that had parked at the Niagara Falls Memorial Arena on Sunday night that received parking tickets, and I wasn't aware until today that during the summer each year we charge for part of the parking there. However, typically, I guess we bag the parking machine when there's community events at the arena. And as it turns out, there were Niagara Falls minor hockey tryouts all day on Sunday, August the 30th. And I did speak with Ed Dulevec, and I asked him to maybe clarify what happened there. And I would just ask Your Worship if we could ask him to clarify the status of those tickets.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yulovich?
Yeah, through Your Worship, I know there were a number of questions, and one of them questions, how long have we had paid parking there? And our staff said over 10 years, and I think it went back to when the Casino Niagara opened, and the city saw it as an opportunity to acquire some additional revenues in the area with parking at that arena, and we introduced paid parking during the summer months. As explained by staff, what normally happens is when there's an event like that goes on at the arena, we would then bag the meter, and we'd inform the commissionaires that the entire lot is now free because of an event going on there. Unfortunately, with some staff turnover over at Parks and Rec, the new staff wasn't aware that that was the procedure to follow. They didn't notify us that there was an event going on, so that we would go in there and bag the machine and not issue any tickets. As a result, staff is aware of it. They've been instructed that if anyone comes to City Hall to deal with their parking tickets down in the traffic section, they will have their tickets canceled, either if you can come down in person to do that, or if you can call them and again asked for the person in charge of parking violations. They will take down your pertinent information. I believe they can do it over the phone, get your appeals done, and cancel those tickets because they shouldn't have been given out in the first place had we known about this event taking place. And we have followed up with the Parks and Rec so that they can orient their new staff to let them know the procedure, because the paid parking still is in effect until October 31st, so they can give us the time and dates of these events so that we can appropriately bag the meter and make sure we let the commissioners know not to go out there and give tickets.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor, for bringing that about. Appreciate it.
Yes, Your Worship, and I appreciate that from staff. And the only question, I guess, only concern is, what about those people that aren't aware that their tickets are able to be canceled? I'm just wondering, is there a procedure? Obviously, we've got their license plate numbers. We have all their information. I don't know if we can be proactive, or if there is anything that we can do to ensure that they don't get a ticket, Your Worship, through staff.
Mr. Dooley?
Through Your Worship, I believe that information is available. I will follow up with the staff if they can do anything, if they can do a search by locale and see who has been issued tickets and see what we can do to let them know.
And perhaps we might publish it in the paper as well, so we'll see what happens here. Thank you. Councillor Maves.
Yes, Your Worship. I had the pleasure earlier in the month to play golf in the Ontario Motor Coach Association golf tournament. And I know the GO train has been very successful here for us. However, I did speak with Mr. Devlin from Trentway Wagar, also known as Coach Canada. He has some concerns about losing business here because of that. And it's too bad Mr. Dren isn't here this evening, but perhaps, Your Worship, you could maybe get in touch with Mr. Devlin, find out some of his concerns. He did mention he may have to pull a service from Niagara Falls, and I'd hate to see that because that's been a vital service for us for many years. So all I'm saying is if someone on staff could contact Mr. Devlin and possibly have some dialogue with him as to see if we can have some sort of a satisfaction for him.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'd be pleased to call him personally as well. We've asked that they engage possibly, and I've asked this of the region, to consider providing intermunicipal service. And it's come up a number of times. We've met with some of his employees, some of his union representatives as well. I've attended a number of meetings here at City Hall. We'd like to see them engage and grow the business and get more people using public transit. I think that's what it's all about with the idea of GO. So I'd be glad to call Mr. Devlin. I'll make a point of doing that in the next day or so. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Anything further? Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Carey, second by Councillor Mays. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you.